Welcome back, Ronin Renegades. I am Lupine Fiasco. This is Daily FaB gameplay, and today's game will be played against Rhinar. For anyone who is new to the channel, welcome to the Resistance. What we do here is review replays of games that I have played on the Talishar client days or weeks ago, after enough time has passed that I lose my bias and am more objectively able to evaluate the quality of my play. I will walk through turn cycles as if I were taking them now, while explaining my thought process for the lines that I take, and compare that to what I did at the time of recording. We either learn from my mistakes or reinforce good play patterns, with the goal of tightening and optimizing our gameplay in the future to take down paper events like Pro Quests or Road to Nationals, and walk away with that shiny cardboard. Without further ado, let's look at our sideboard and our game plan. Today's game features my Switchblade list. If you would like to check this deck out on FaB or try it for yourself on Talishar, the deck link is available in the video description below. While you're down there, if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my channel. It is the best free way to support me and to make sure you see daily FaB gameplay in your video feed 5 days a week. I wanted to show this game to you because it's a follow-up to the Rhinar game I posted a few weeks ago. I was given some good feedback about the matchup and wanted to show how I have improved in my decision-making. I also wanted to show that this is still a pretty flexible matchup. Rhinar and I are both going to take some interesting turns over the course of this very short game, and the result easily could have gone one way or the other based on better draws or outcomes. So with Rhinar gaining a little popularity in the meta lately, I wanted to show that this is still a close matchup, that Rhinar can play very flexibly into Ninja, and that we really need to be on our best gameplay in order to take a win. We win the die roll, and we are going to put Rhinar going first. There is some debate to whether we should be going first or second in this matchup, the idea for going first being that we don't get rolled by Rhinar. A Rhinar that plays Barraging Beatdown, Smash Instinct on turn 0 is going to deal a lot of damage to us because we cannot effectively block it. But he could do that on his turn 1 as well if we go first. The high roll is always there. For any hero that we want to put first, they could do something horrible to us on turn 0. Azalea can dominate a Red in the Ledger turn 0. Bravo can dominate a Starstruck on turn 0. But what is more likely to happen is that we get to do some blocking on turn 0, we draw up at the end of our opponent's turn, then we get to tear into their hand size or their life total because they are not incentivized to give us their entire hand on defense. So we are going to choose to go second here. As far as equipment, I am of the opinion that Emberblade Pouncing Lynx is the way to go in this matchup because Rhinar plays so well on 2 cards. Depending on the Rhinar build, he may be able to just block between 6 and 8 points of damage on our turn, then attack for 6 or 8 points of damage on his turn, waiting until he draws into that Blood Rush Bellow and can just kill us. So I'm convinced that we won't trigger Mask of Momentum over the course of the game, but we also aren't disrupting Rhinar's plan by making him block. So that all being said, we're going to opt for the higher damage build of Searing Emberblade Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, where we only need to hit once to get our mask value. We will be keeping our Flamescale Furnace for its extra block value over the course of the game, and because Brute does not deal arcane damage, we don't need our Spell Void or our Arcane Barrier. Looking at the 60, because I am on Emberblade, I am bringing in extra blues. This list is slightly tweaked from where I was pre-Worlds, but has not yet been fully tweaked for post-Icelander. So we still have the opportunity to bring extra blues into this matchup. We are cutting our bleed outs, of course, because we are on an Emberblade plan, so we can never discount bleed out, and 2 for 4 go again that blocks 2 is terrible. We're also cutting Bittering Thorns because we have our Emberblade in. We want to reduce the number of 1 costs in our deck, and Bittering Thorns is not Draconic, so we would easily run Mounting Anger over Bittering Thorns. Our game plan in this matchup is just to race. We can play for the value game depending on how Rhinar attacks. We're happy to block 6 if the opportunity presents itself, knowing that Rhinar can't really utilize a 4-card hand very well without Bloodrush Bellow. That is something I learned from comments from viewers after my last Rhinar game. So we're just playing for the maximum value every turn cycle, looking for our own Art of War to throw big damage at Rhinar. Depending on how Rhinar blocks with Scowling Fleshbag, we may need to adjust gameplays on the fly. Maybe we need to pitch an Art of War to an Emberblade because we have something else that we can stick in our arsenal at the end of the turn. Or maybe we need to sequence a little differently to keep 2 finishers in our hand so that we can always play at least one of them. But for the most part, we're just smacking Rhinar around, and he's smacking us around, and it's who can smack the other one hardest first. With all that said, let's jump into the game and see how it all comes together. Phoenix Flame goes to discard. We draw into a pretty decent hand here. Rhinar throws Beast Within, and we get to do a little blocking. Of these 4 cards, the safest option is to keep a Rising Resentment. If we draw into another Draconic starter, then Snatch would be a very good card to keep, but I don't want to risk not having a way to give my Emberblade go again, so we're going to block with everything but a Rising Resentment and see what we draw into. We are, of course, rewarded for going second here, as Rhinar does absolutely nothing on his turn except for filter a few cards from hand. The hand that we draw into would really have been benefited by a Snatch. Of course, we couldn't have known that going into the turn. As it is, we would like to keep either our Rising Resentment or our Brand with Cinderclaw for the arsenal. Between those two, I think Rising Resentment is the better choice. It has a little more utility going into the future, possibly being able to discount a 1-cost card. So for this turn, I would like to attack with Brand with Cinderclaw, then pitch our Lava Vein Loyalty to attack with Emberblade, use our floating resource to pick up and play a Phoenix Flame, then attack with Stab Wound. Stab Wound, of course, does not have an on-hit when we are on our Emberblade, but it does deal an extra point of damage compared to Lava Vein Loyalty. Glad that I made the correct decision in the past to save Rising Resentment rather than attack with it. There is an argument for keeping Brand to make sure that we can activate FaB for free if we draw into something like a Ravenous Rabble or a Bittering Thorns that we need to give the Draconic type line to. But for the most part, the upside on Rising Resentment is higher than the upside on Brand with Cinderclaw. Rhinar sticking to the game plan that I figured he would be on, block 7, swing for whatever. Here, Reincarnate coming in for 6. We draw into an Art of War, so we don't need to block this. That said, we don't have a blue in hand, so we will need to do a bit of smart sequencing here. We would like to have Rising Resentment discount Bittering Thorns, which means we need to at least open our turn with Brand with Cinderclaw. From there, we can decide whether we want to follow up with Rising Resentment or Blaze Headlong. I believe the correct call here is to follow up with Blaze Headlong. Maybe that convinces Rhinar to block, leaving him unable to block the Rising Resentment. It seems unlikely, but I do think it is the smarter plan. Rising Resentment gets blocked by armor, and in particular the Scowling Fleshbag, which leaves us with the option I had talked about in our game plan. We are going to pitch the Art of War here to attack with the Emberblade because we just want to get it out of our hand. Bittering Thorns will come back from Banish in our end step. We do get to stick that in Arsenal, so holding on to Art of War is just 3 missed damage. We're also going to break Mask of the Pouncing Lynx here. I think this is a good call. We get 7 points of damage out of it based on hits on the chain and our Shugo trigger. But more than that, I have a very strong feeling that Rhinar is going to play a Bloodrush Bellow here, and depending on how that turn goes, we might not get another opportunity to use our Pouncing Lynx. If we have to do heavy blocking on our turn, or if certain cards get stripped or taken from us, we may not be able to get this much value out of Pouncing Lynx. So where I would normally want to save it for when Rhinar is a bit lower on life, we're going to break it here. Rhinar choosing to take 7, which makes sense if he has Bloodrush Bellow, and we can see that is in fact what Rhinar is doing. We draw into a pretty good hand on our side of the table. We are just hoping to survive the turn. Rhinar dealing 34 points of damage on a single Bloodrush Bellow turn is pretty unlikely, but it isn't unheard of, especially if he finds another one. So I am feeling pretty good about using Pouncing Lynx on that last turn. Heartened Cross Strap breaking for Command and Conquer. Overall, this is a 16-point Bloodrush turn, not insane by any means. I would have liked to keep the Bittering Thorns, but keeping all of these cards in hand is just going to serve us a bit better. Looking at our hand here, we have not a ton of options for sequencing. This yellow brand prevents us from doing anything with our Emberblade. So I like just playing this hand out. Brand with Cinderclaw, Double Strike, Ravenous Rabble, Lava Burst, pick up and arsenal our Phoenix Flame. Lava Burst gives us our 3rd Draconic Link, so unfortunately we cannot pick up and play the Phoenix Flame first, but we will still push quite a bit of damage on this turn and set up a 5-card hand for our next turn. Phoenix Flame in the arsenal is rarely what we want to see, but at the very least, it turns on Blaze Headlong if necessary. If we draw into an Art of War, we can do shenanigans with Phoenix Flame for 1, close the chain, then pick it up later. Seeing that we will draw into an Art of War, so that could very well be on the table. Rhinar does very little blocking. This makes me think he might have another Bloodrush Bellow in hand, which would really be a shame for us. We draw into a hand that can do some blocking if necessary, but for the most part, we are just hoping that Rhinar can't find more than 22 points of damage. And in fact, he does not. We will take this Swing Big down to 5. That keeps us alive through 2 Reckless Swings. It puts us dead to 3, but that is not something that Rhinar can do. So when playing against Brute, you always want to stay above 2 life if possible. Going to 2 or 1 puts you dead to a Reckless Swing. Staying above 4 life is important when you can afford to do it. Going to 4 or 3 puts you dead to 2 Reckless Swings, but even then, the Reckless Swings need to not discard each other. So in this case, we will go to 5, and that's okay. Throw a big Art of War on our turn. Because we have this Phoenix Flame in Arsenal, we can play it for 1, then break the chain and pick it up later with FaB. Based on that, the question is whether we are banishing this Ravenous Rabble or this Brand with Cinderclaw with Art of War. I think the smart play is to banish the Brand. We are in a tight situation here with Rhinar where we just need to make sure we don't brick, and Brand with Cinderclaw makes us much less likely to do so. I choose the riskier line, banishing Brand with Cinderclaw, but am rewarded in picking up a Blaze Headlong, so we can play our Phoenix Flame, then break the chain. Blaze Headlong will have go again because we played a red card this turn. We can then attack with Searing Emberblade and Lava Vein Loyalty. That gives us our 3 Draconic Links to pick up and replay our Phoenix Flame, and we get to end the turn with Ravenous Rabble. Rhinar certainly could survive through that, but probably not have very much he can do on his turn. We still have our Snapdragon Scalers up, so if we somehow don't manage to win this turn, we can't brick on our next one. So I feel in a very good spot here. Rhinar just doing a bit of blocking. If he has a defense reaction available, then he is still alive. We are pushing 2 damage from the Phoenix Flame and a potential 5 from the Ravenous Rabble. Rabble does reveal a red, and Rhinar decides to pack it in. So a pretty close game, all things considered. If either of those Blood Rush Bellow turns had been better for Rhinar, we could very easily be dead. If Rhinar had thrown a bit more disruption, maybe had a second Command and Conquer somewhere in there, we could very well be dead. And if our Art of War had drawn a little worse, we could very well be dead. So I wanted to show this because it showcases the power of Rhinar in that he can block for 6 to 8 damage, attack for 6 to 8 damage, then take the hits when he is going to play a Blood Rush Bellow. Depending on how the draws line up for Rhinar, he can send a lot of damage our way. He threatened 31 damage over 2 turns, and in those 2 turns had cards left over in hand. So we are talking a 3 or 4 card 16. That's very good. And he did it 2 times in a row, and if those draws had gone better for him, you can see how we would have found ourselves in a very poor position. Rhinar looks to be in a good place in this post-Icelander meta, and we are going to have to contend with that by just playing very tight and very efficiently. There really is no silver bullet for Brute that Ninja is capable of producing. I do hope you enjoyed this game. I hope you learned something from it. If you did, be sure to head jab that like button. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback, and I will be back tomorrow with more daily FaB gameplay. Until then, take care.